The couple had been dreaming of a quiet life away from the chaos of the city. They were tired of honking cars, crowded streets, and the constant noise that never seemed to stop. For years they saved up every penny, imagining a cozy little cottage by the lake where they could finally breathe easy. But fate had other plans. One lazy Sunday afternoon, while scrolling through real estate listings online, something caught their eye. It wasn't the cottage they'd envisioned. It was far from it. The listing showed a massive Victorian mansion, complete with towering columns, intricate woodwork, and sprawling gardens. What stood out most, though, was the price. It was unbelievably low, almost too good to be true. Curiosity got the better of them. "Let's just check it out," one of them said, half joking. The next day, they found themselves standing in front of the grand structure, its windows glinting in the sunlight. The real estate agent greeted them warmly, but seemed oddly vague about the house's history. She mentioned something about quirks and a bit of charm that comes with age, brushing off any concerns with a smile. Inside, the mansion was breathtaking. A sweeping staircase dominated the entrance hall, flanked by ornate chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. The wooden floors creaked underfoot, adding to the old-world charm. One room led to another, a library filled with dusty books, a dining hall large enough to seat 20, and bedrooms with fireplaces that looked like they hadn't been used in decades. Despite some reservations, they couldn't resist. The place felt magical, like stepping into another era. Before they knew it, papers were signed, keys exchanged, and the mansion became theirs. Moving in was an adventure in itself. Boxes upon boxes filled the once empty rooms, but even amidst the clutter, the house seemed alive in a way neither of them could explain. It didn't take long for strange things to start happening. At first, it was small stuffed doors creaking open on their own, drafts that came out of nowhere, shadows flickering across walls when no one was around. They laughed it off at first, blaming the quirks on the house being old. But then, things escalated. One evening, as they unpacked in the library, one of them stumbled upon a hidden compartment in an antique bookshelf. Inside was an old leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with time. The handwriting inside was elegant yet urgent, belonging to someone named Eleanor who lived in the house over a century ago. Her words painted a vivid picture of her life, the joys, the sorrows, and the secrets she kept locked away. Reading the journal aloud became a nightly ritual. Each entry revealed more about Eleanor's world, her love for the house, and her growing unease about her husband, Charles. He appeared to be a man with a dark side, someone who spent hours locked away in his study and whose behavior grew increasingly erratic. Then, one day, he vanished without a trace. The deeper they read, the more they realized the house held secrets far beyond what they'd imagined. Late at night, they'd hear faint whispers, as if the walls themselves were trying to speak. Shadows moved in ways that defied logic, and cold spots lingered in certain corners of the mansion. Yet, instead of fear, they felt a strange pull and urge to uncover the truth hidden within the house's walls. Little did they know, opening that journal was like turning a key in a long-forgotten lock. Something dormant stirred, awakened by their curiosity. The house, which had seemed so enchanting at first glance, now felt like it was watching them, waiting. And as they continued to dig deeper, they began to wonder, had they bought a home or unleashed something they couldn't control? Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, made them question whether they were truly alone. But there was no turning back now. The mansion had become more than just a house. It was a mystery begging to be solved, and they were determined to find out what lay hidden beneath its beautiful facade. As the days turned into weeks, the couple found themselves more and more drawn to the journal. Each page they read pulled them deeper into Eleanor's world, a world that was both fascinating and unsettling. The entries started out cheerful, filled with descriptions of grand parties, quiet moments in the garden, and the love she shared with her husband. But as they flipped through the pages, the tone began to shift. Eleanor's words grew darker, more anxious. She wrote about arguments behind closed doors, strange visitors late at night, and a growing sense of unease. One passage stood out, a chilling account of how Charles, her husband, had locked himself in his study for days without explanation. When he finally emerged, he was pale and distant, avoiding her questions. Then, one morning, he simply disappeared. No note, no explanation, nothing. The journal ended abruptly after that, leaving more questions than answers. The couple couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. They decided to dig deeper, not just into the journal, but into the mansion itself. Every room seemed to hold some kind of secret. One evening, while exploring the attic, they stumbled upon an old trunk filled with letters tied together with faded ribbon. The handwriting on the envelopes matched Eleanor's, but the contents were even more cryptic. Some mentioned names they didn't recognize, while others hinted at deals gone wrong and people who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Their search didn't stop there. In the basement, they discovered loose floorboards beneath a pile of old rugs. Hidden underneath was a small metal box rusted with age. Inside, they found a collection of photographs, stiff, formal portraits of stern-faced men and women who looked like they belonged to another time. Among them was a picture of Charles staring directly at the camera with an expression that sent shivers down their spines. Something about his eyes felt off, like he was hiding something. With each new discovery, the house seemed to grow more alive. Doors that had been stuck for years suddenly opened on their own. Footsteps echoed through empty hallways when no one was around. One night, as they sat in the library reading by candlelight, they heard a faint whisper. At first, they thought it was the wind, but then it came again, clearer this time. It was soft, almost melodic, repeating words they couldn't quite make out. They froze, hearts pounding, unsure whether to investigate or run, despite the growing unease. They couldn't bring themselves to leave. The mansion had a grip on them, pulling them further into its mystery. They began spending hours researching its history, visiting the local library, and talking to elderly neighbors who still remembered stories passed down through generations. One neighbor, an older woman with sharp eyes and a gravelly voice, told them about the rumors that surrounded the house. People used to say it was cursed, that bad things happened to those who lived there. Others whispered about a hidden room somewhere in the mansion, a place where Charles supposedly kept secrets too dangerous to share. The idea of a secret room intrigued them. If such a place existed, it could hold the answers they were looking for. Armed with flashlights and determination, they scoured the house from top to bottom, tapping on walls, inspecting every nook and cranny. It wasn't easy. Some parts of the mansion were so old that the wood groaned under their weight and cobwebs clung to their clothes like ghostly fingers. But they pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and the nagging feeling that they were being watched. Finally, after days of searching, they found it. Behind a heavy tapestry in the master bedroom was a narrow door, nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. It was locked, but nearby they discovered a rusted key tucked into a crack in the wall. When they turned the key, the door creaked open, revealing a steep spiral staircase leading down into darkness. Standing at the top of the stairs, they hesitated. The air smelled damp and musty, and the darkness below seemed impenetrable. But they had come too far to turn back. Now, taking a deep breath, they descended, their footsteps echoing in the silence. At the bottom, they found themselves in a small, windowless room. It was cluttered with old furniture covered in decades of dust, shelves lined with jars containing unidentifiable substances, and papers scattered across a large wooden desk. Among the documents, they found a ledger detailing transactions that made their blood run cold. Smuggling, bribes, blackmail. It seemed Charles had been involved in all kinds of illegal activities. But what really chilled them was the portrait hanging on the far wall. It was Charles, staring straight ahead with an intensity that made it feel like he was watching them. His eyes seemed to follow their every move, no matter where they stood. In the room, that night, the house came alive in ways they hadn't experienced before. Lights flickered uncontrollably, cold drafts swept through rooms, and disembodied voices screamed warnings they couldn't understand. Terrified but unwilling to give up, they realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. Whatever force lingered in the mansion wasn't content to stay hidden any longer. As dawn broke, they sat together in the kitchen, exhausted but resolute. They knew they couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. If they wanted to uncover the truth and possibly find peace, they would have to confront the past head-on. But as they prepared to take the next step, they couldn't shake the feeling that the mansion's secrets were only beginning to reveal themselves. The couple couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old house felt louder, every shadow darker. After their discovery in the hidden room, they knew they were dealing with something far bigger than either of them had imagined. The ledger and the portrait of Charles haunted them, not just because of what they revealed, but because it felt like the house itself was reacting. It was alive in a way neither of them could explain, and it wasn't happy. They decided to talk to someone who might understand what was happening. A quick search online led them to an expert, a historian who specialized in old houses and the stories they held. Her name was Dr. Margaret Hensley, and she had spent years studying places like theirs. When they called her, she listened intently, asking questions about the house, its history, and the strange occurrences they'd experienced. By the end of the conversation, she agreed to visit. Dr. Hensley arrived the next afternoon, carrying a leather satchel filled with books and papers. She was warm and approachable, with a calm demeanor that put them at ease. As she walked through the mansion, her eyes lit up. "This place has seen so much," she said, running her fingers over the intricate carvings on the banister. "It's not just wood and stone, it's a vessel for memories, emotions, and sometimes unfinished business." She asked to see the journal in the hidden room. They showed her everything: the ledger, the portrait of Charles, the jars filled with unidentifiable substances. Dr. Hensley studied each item carefully, her expression growing more serious with every passing moment. Finally, she sat down with them in the library, her voice soft but firm. "There are rumors about this house," she began. "People say Eleanor didn't leave willingly. Some believe she cursed the mansion after discovering what Charles had done. Others think she died under mysterious circumstances, or worse, that she never truly left." She paused, letting her words sink in. "If her spirit is here, it's likely because she feels trapped. She may be trying to communicate to tell you something important." The idea of a ghost unsettled them, but deep down, they knew it made sense. The whispers, the cold spots, the feeling of being watched, it all pointed to something supernatural. Dr. Hensley explained that spirits often linger when they have unresolved issues or when their story hasn't been told. If Eleanor was indeed haunting the house, they needed to help her find closure. That evening, armed with Dr. Hensley's advice, they decided to try a ritual outlined in one of Eleanor's later journal entries. The passage described a cleansing ceremony meant to honor the past and release lingering energies. It required gathering specific items scattered throughout the house: a silver locket, a vial of salt water, and a lock of hair. Each item represented a piece of Eleanor's life, her love, her pain, and her humanity. Finding the items wasn't easy. The locket was tucked inside a drawer in the master bedroom, its chain tangled around a faded photograph of Eleanor and Charles. The vial of salt water was mentioned in another journal entry buried in the garden beneath a rose bush. The lock of hair proved the hardest to locate. It was hidden inside the frame of the portrait of Charles. Wrapped in a tiny piece of silk dot as they collected each item, the house seemed to react. Doors slammed shut without warning. Lights dimmed and brightened unpredictably. One night, as they searched for the lock of hair, they heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Their hearts raced, but they pressed on, determined to finish what they'd started. Finally, they had everything they needed. They returned to the hidden room, placing the items on the desk where they'd found the ledger. Following the instructions in the journal, they lit candles and spoke aloud, addressing Eleanor directly. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the air grew colder. The flames flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. A figure began to materialize before their eyes. It was Eleanor, translucent and shimmering like mist. She looked exactly as she did in the photographs, elegant yet sorrowful, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. For a moment, no one moved. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I've waited so long for someone to listen," she said. Her words sent chills down their spines, but they stayed rooted in place. She told them about Charles's crimes, how he had betrayed her trust and destroyed countless lives. She spoke of her own despair, of feeling trapped between worlds, unable to move on until the truth was known. The couple listened intently, promising to share her story with the world. They assured her that her voice would finally be heard, that the secrets of the mansion would no longer remain buried. As they spoke, Eleanor's expression softened. Tears streamed down her face, though they evaporated into the air before reaching the ground. "Thank you," she whispered, her form beginning to fade. "You've given me peace." When she disappeared, the room fell silent. The oppressive energy that had lingered for so long was gone, replaced by a sense of calm. The couple sat there for a while, holding each other, overwhelmed by what they'd just witnessed. They had entered the mansion looking for a home, but instead, they had uncovered a century-old tragedy and helped bring it to light. Though the experience left them shaken, they felt a newfound connection to the house. It was no longer just a building. It was a living testament to the people who had lived and suffered within its walls. And as they stepped out of the hidden room, they knew their journey with the mansion was far from over. There were still stories to uncover, lessons to learn, and perhaps even more mysteries waiting to be solved. But for now, they had given Eleanor the closure she deserved, and in doing so, they had taken the first step toward healing the scars of the past. The days that followed Eleanor's departure were strange but peaceful. The oppressive weight that had hung over the mansion seemed to lift, replaced by an almost soothing calm. For the first time since moving in, the couple felt like they could breathe freely. They no longer jumped at every creak or shiver at every shadow. It was as if the house itself was exhaling, finally able to rest after being burdened for so long. But while the haunting presence was gone, the memories of what they'd uncovered lingered. They couldn't just walk away from everything they'd learned, it not after seeing Eleanor's face, hearing her voice, and promising to share her story. The mansion wasn't just their home anymore. It was a piece of history, a silent witness to secrets that had been buried for over a century. And now it was up to them to make sure those secrets saw the light of day. They started small, poring over the journal again and organizing all the artifacts they'd found, the ledger, the photographs, the letters tied with faded ribbon. Each item told a fragment of the story, and together they began piecing it all together. Late into the night, they sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and notes, trying to understand the full scope of Charles's crimes and Eleanor's suffering. One evening, While sorting through the documents, they stumbled upon something unexpected, a letter addressed not to Eleanor, but to someone named Thomas. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic, and the tone was desperate. "I know what you've done," it read. "You can't keep running forever. Justice will find you." The letter wasn't signed, but it mentioned details that matched. Some entries in Eleanor's journal. Could this be proof of Charles's guilt? Or was it evidence of someone else involved in his schemes? Determined to find out more, they decided to dig deeper into the town's records. The local historical society became their second home. They spent hours combing through old newspapers, court documents, and census data, searching for any mention of Charles Whitmore or the mansion. What they discovered shocked them. There were whispers of scandals involving prominent families in the area during the late 1800s disappearances, lawsuits, even rumors of a secret society operating under the radar. None of it was ever proven, but the timing matched perfectly with the events described in Eleanor's journal. As they pieced the puzzle together, they realized how dangerous Charles's actions must have been. He hadn't just been smuggling goods or taking bribes. He had been part of something much darker, something that threatened powerful people. That's why he disappeared, they thought. Someone silenced him before he could expose the truth. But who? And where did Eleanor fit into all of this? Their research led them back to Dr. Hensley, the historian who had helped them earlier. When they showed her the letter and shared their findings, she nodded thoughtfully. "It makes sense," she said. Eleanor wasn't just a victim of Charles's crimes. She was also caught in the crossfire of something much bigger. If she knew too much, she might have been seen as a threat. Dr. Hensley suggested they reach out to a journalist friend of hers who specialized in uncovering forgotten stories. Together, they crafted a plan to bring Eleanor's tale to the public eye. They wanted to write a book, create exhibits, and maybe even turn the mansion into a museum dedicated to preserving its history. It wouldn't just honor Eleanor, it would serve as a reminder of the importance of truth and accountability, no matter how painful it might be. While working on these plans, they continued restoring the mansion. Room by room, they brought it back to life, carefully preserving its original beauty while making it livable for modern times. They painted walls, repaired broken fixtures, and planted new flowers in the garden. With each improvement, they felt a growing sense of pride, not just in their hard work, but in knowing they were giving the house a new purpose. Still, there were moments when the past seemed to linger, reminding them of how far they'd come. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, they found another hidden compartment behind a loose panel. Inside was a small wooden box containing a delicate silver necklace. Engraved on the pendant were the initials EWA, Eleanor Whitmore. Holding it in their hands, they felt a wave of emotion. It was as if Eleanor herself was thanking them for their efforts. That night, they placed the necklace on the desk in the hidden room, along with the other items they'd collected. Lighting a candle, they spoke aloud once more, telling Eleanor about their progress and promising to keep her memory alive. Though she didn't appear this time, they felt her presence, a gentle warmth, a soft breeze, a quiet reassurance that she approved. As weeks turned into months, the mansion transformed. Visitors began arriving, friends, neighbors, curious locals, all eager to hear its story. The couple welcomed them warmly, sharing tales of Eleanor, Charles, and the secrets they'd uncovered. People marveled at the beauty of the house and the resilience of those who had lived within its walls. Some even claimed to feel a lingering energy, a sense of connection to the spirits of the past. Through it all, the couple grew closer than ever. Their shared journey had tested them in ways they never imagined, but it had also strengthened their bond. They weren't just partners, they were a team, united by a mission to uncover the truth and honor those who had come before them. By the time the first anniversary of their move rolled around, the mansion had become more than just a home. It was a sanctuary, a place where the past and present coexisted peacefully. The couple often stood on the porch at sunset, watching the golden light spill across the gardens. They thought about how different their lives were now compared to when they first arrived. Back then, they had been strangers to the house, unsure of what lay ahead. Now they were its caretakers, its storytellers, its protectors, and yet they knew the mansion still held secrets, rooms they hadn't explored, stories they hadn't uncovered. But instead of fearing the unknown, they embraced it. After all, they had already faced the unimaginable and come out stronger on the other side. Whatever mysteries remained, they would tackle them together, one step at a time. For now, though, they were content. The mansion had given them more than they ever expected, a home, a purpose, and a chance to rewrite history. And as they looked toward the future, they knew one thing for certain: the house had chosen them just as much as they had chosen it. The transformation of the mansion was nothing short of remarkable. What had once been a crumbling relic of the past now stood as a testament to resilience, beauty, and the power of uncovering hidden truths. The couple poured their hearts into restoring every inch of the house, blending its original charm with modern touches that made it livable again. Each room told a story, some joyful, others haunting, but all were part of the tapestry that made the mansion unique. Word spread quickly about the mysterious Victorian estate and the people who had brought it back to life. Visitors came from far and wide, eager to see the place where history and mystery intertwined. Some were curious about the ghost stories. Others wanted to marvel at the architecture or learn more about the Whitmore family's tragic legacy. The couple welcomed them all, sharing Eleanor's story with anyone willing to listen. They spoke passionately about her courage, her pain, and her ultimate quest for justice. It wasn't just a tale of loss, it was a reminder of the importance of truth, even when it's buried deep beneath layers of time. To honor Eleanor's memory, they turned the mansion into a museum of sorts. The grand parlor became an exhibit showcasing artifacts they'd uncovered: the journal, the ledger, the faded photographs, and even the silver locket engraved with Iiwu. A glass case in the library displayed letters tied with ribbon, each one offering glimpses into the lives of those who had walked the halls over a century ago. In the garden, they planted roses near the spot where they'd unearthed the vial of salt water, adding a plaque that read *** for Eleanor, whose voice will never be silenced again. **, but the hidden room remained untouched. It wasn't open. To the public, it felt too sacred, too personal. Instead, they kept it as a private space, a quiet reminder of the journey they'd taken and the promises they'd made. Occasionally, they'd sit inside, surrounded by the remnants of the past, and reflect on how much had changed since they first stepped foot in the mansion. They often wondered if Eleanor still lingered somewhere within the walls, watching over them, ensuring her story was told the way she deserved. Life in the mansion settled into a rhythm. Days were filled with tours, restoration projects, and conversations with visitors. Nights were quieter, though not entirely silent. Sometimes they'd hear faint sounds, a creak here, a whisper there, but these moments no longer frightened them. If anything, they found comfort in knowing the house still held echoes of its past. It was alive in a way few homes ever were, and they cherished that connection. One evening, after closing the doors to the last group of visitors, they sat together on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, one of them broke the silence. "Do you think we did enough? Do you think Eleanor's happy now?" The other smiled softly. "I think she is. We gave her a voice and we're making sure the world remembers her. That's what she wanted, right? To be heard." They nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over them. They had started this journey looking for a home but ended up finding something far greater: purpose. The mansion had become more than just four walls and a roof. It was a symbol of redemption, healing, and the enduring power of human connection. As months turned into years, the couple continued to share Eleanor's story. They wrote articles, gave interviews, and eventually published a book based on the journal and their discoveries. Readers were captivated by the tale of love, betrayal, and perseverance. Critics praised it as a poignant exploration of how the past shapes the present. But for the couple, the book was more than just a literary achievement. It was a promise kept. Their efforts didn't go unnoticed. The mansion gained recognition beyond the local community, drawing historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and tourists alike. Schools began organizing field trips, using the house as a living classroom to teach students about history, ethics, and the consequences of unchecked greed. Local businesses benefited too, with cafes and shops seeing an influx of customers, eager to experience the town's newfound fame. Through it all, the couple remained humble. They knew the real heroes of the story weren't them, it was Eleanor, Charles's victims, and everyone else whose lives had been touched by the mansion's secrets. Their role was simply to shine a light on what had been hidden for so long. Still, there were challenges. Maintaining such a large property required constant work and financial investment. There were days when exhaustion set in, when doubts crept in about whether they could keep going. But every time they felt overwhelmed, they reminded themselves why they started this journey in the first place. This wasn't just their home, it was a responsibility, a legacy they were entrusted to protect. Years later, as they stood side by side during a special anniversary event celebrating the mansion's reopening, they looked out at the crowd gathered in the gardens. Families laughed, children played, and strangers exchanged stories about how the house had impacted their lives. It was a scene they never could have imagined when they first stumbled upon the listing online. That night, as they locked up the house and prepared for bed, they paused in the hallway, staring at the portrait of Charles that still hung in the hidden room. His eyes seemed less menacing now, almost resigned. Beside him, they'd placed a small frame containing a photograph of Eleanor smiling faintly in her wedding dress. Together, the two images served as a reminder of the complexity of human nature, the capacity for both harm and healing. Climbing into bed, they reflected on everything they'd been through. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and heartache, but they had also discovered strength, hope, and a profound sense of fulfillment. The mansion had tested them in ways they never expected, but it had also given them a gift, the chance to make a difference. As sleep overtook them, they dreamed of Eleanor not as a ghostly figure, but as a woman standing in the sunlight, her face radiant with gratitude. She nodded once before turning away, disappearing into the horizon. When they woke the next morning, they felt lighter, as if a final chapter had been written. The mansion would always hold mysteries, secrets waiting to be uncovered. But for now, it was at peace, and so were they.